and welcome to our interview series where we're highlighting the ways that people are fostering mental health. And today we have a great guest, Raghu Appasani, and he is the founder and CEO of the Minds Foundation. He has an amazing background and is doing some fantastic work. So thank you so much for joining us, Raghu.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Donna.
I'm so excited to hear more about your work. I know we've talked, and you've got part of an amazing thing this weekend as well that we can talk about. So tell us, how did you get here, and tell us about the Minds Foundation.
Sure. I think it's been an interesting journey. So I was born in Boston, but I lived in India actually from 1.5 to 4. In the village that my mother was raised in. So I was actually living with my grandparents and an uncle for a few years there without my family around, my immediate family around rather. So that's an interesting thing to think about now as a psychiatrist and how that might have formed my attachment and relationships, later in my life. So, but I primarily grew up in the Boston area and I entered the scientific lab scene pretty early, like freshman year of high school, I believe. My dad's a biochemist, so he got me in there quite early. And I actually started working in a neuroscience lab, looking at the development of memory in mice. And then I kind of went from there and worked at Columbia and Mount Sinai. And I did a lot of research looking at pathways of addiction and depression. But for some reason, I think what was lacking was a sense of connection to the human experience. And so while I was at Wesleyan in undergrad, I went and volunteered in Bihar, India, which is a pretty impoverished region of India in the northeast part of the country. And it really exposed me to a lot of healthcare disparities. But what it really exposed me to, besides that, was the power of community and how, despite not having certain luxuries, let's say, people were still supportive of each other. And during that time, I experienced a lot of mental health and stigma within my own family. And it led me to really think about what can we really do to create an impact that can help a lot of people, right? And for me, it wasn't investing my time and resources into advocacy to convince large governments. It wasn't creating a standalone center. It was coming down to the root of what I think is the solution for social change as a whole, which is empowering people with education. And that's what got my parents to really advance in their own lives, coming from very rural villages in India to, becoming a professor at Harvard and MIT. And so I saw it growing up. And I knew that if we're going to change the way that mental health is addressed and seen, we have to empower people with the education to help each other.
I think that's so important. I may be a little bit biased as a teacher, but yeah, I think we were just talking about the whole idea of scalability, and the one way we can really scale mental health work is starting with education.
Yeah, and we at Minds Foundation, that's the ethos of it. It's how do you create a society that's more empathetic and compassionate, where everyone is accepted for who they are, regardless of where they are on the mental health spectrum. And if you create a society that is educated and understands what mental health and wellness is, right, then they'll be more accepting. And so we go into schools, we go into rural communities, into urban communities, and we learn what exactly the pain points are and what's lacking. So it's not one overarching program. It's really very hands-on, human-centered design approach, delivering education, door-to-door services, very grassroots level work. Obviously, with the pandemic, we've taken things online and have done webinars and podcasts, and we're literally texting SMS messages on WhatsApp to health workers in villages to spread the word and keep what we can going. But it's powerful. And you brought up the scalability part. Education is scalable. You don't need much to do it. And our social return on investment right now, in terms of our programming in the Gujarat side of things, is for $1, you can educate 14 people, right? And so we can think about that and what that means.
Yeah. It's amazing how we can do things in education that really don't have to be that expensive, that can make a huge impact.
Yeah.
And you come also from the clinical side, because you are studying to be a doctor, or are you a doctor?
I am a doctor. I'm a resident though in psychiatry at LA County USC Hospital, but I went to medical school at UMass Medical back in Boston.
So sorry, I should have said Dr. Raghu Appasani.
Okay.
So, and I would imagine residents, are you seeing some stuff that's kind of changing now? Are you in the hospital? You would just come from the hospital, I know.
Yeah, I just got home actually, and uh, it's interesting. So we at the hospital that I work at, we deal with a lot of very a lot of people who have a lot of psychosocial stressors layered on top of trauma, layered on top of substance use, layered on top of very, very severe mental illness.
Mm.
And we deal with a pretty heavy forensics and substance population. We deal with a pretty heavy homeless population. It is a county hospital. And Los Angeles, in a way, has they have one of the largest budgets in America for mental health. But what that means is that a lot of places around the country send patients here. Um,
Yeah.
I don't want to call it dumping, but they do send people here. And so at LA County USC, we see those patients, and it is very challenging. I think that what we're seeing with the pandemic is that those who have dealt with mental health in the past are um, starting to have symptoms again, or relapsing, for lack of a better word. And those that have dealt with substance use, similar issues.
Mhm.
I believe across the country, we're seeing a 400% increase in alcohol use now.
Wow.
So there's staggering numbers across the board. Um, People are being triggered by traumas. Domestic violence is going up. I was speaking with a friend yesterday about sex trafficking and how that area is being affected as well. So we are seeing a lot of people who are just, they don't have a job, and it's hard to find employment right now during a pandemic as well. So they end up homeless or lose their housing, or it's pretty devastating. It's very, very tough. And I think that we can't forget, as we develop campaigns and education and advocacy around mental health, that there's a large majority who have pretty severe mental illness, and they have no support from family or friends. Um, and their reality is very different than our reality.
Yes. It's definitely different. And I think there are so many different ways that this issue needs to be addressed, from prevention through to treatment. And that, each stage has a very different, and people have very different ways that we need to reach them. And I know it must be really, really tough right now. And we're hearing it through the news, but you're seeing it each day in the hospital. And I know that also on the scalability side, you're involved in an amazing conference that's happening this weekend. The neuro-
Yeah, I sure. Yeah, so um, I had the pleasure of actually being introduced to Gabriella Wright, who is one of the co-founders of the Never Alone initiative, along with Deepak Chopra and Punacha. Um, and I met Gabriella, and I met Punacha, who actually came to Los Angeles back in January and was a panelist at one of the Minds Foundation LA events on personal identity. And I think what I'll say from meeting both of them, and I will call them very good and close friends at this point, is that they are two of the most real, raw, and compassionate and loving people I've met. And it has been truly an honor to be able to join them as a partner, along with a lot of other inspiring individuals and organizations and foundations, to launch the Never Alone Summit, which is a global mental health summit. It started this morning, or it started this Friday. It's going Saturday and Sunday. I'm speaking on Sunday around 11 Pacific time.
Oh,
Um,
good.
but it's a very, very diverse approach to the wellness sector with speakers and artists from all over the place and all over the world.
It's an amazing lineup. I can't wait to hear so many of the speakers. I was not able to join today, but I am planning all weekend to have that up because I think there's going to be amazing speakers all weekend. And then you were saying it's recorded so people will have access, which is wonderful.
Yes, it is recorded. It'll be on demand, and there will be a lot more content coming out as well following. So this is just the beginning of a larger movement and a larger way to educate and engage people all around the world.
Think it's phenomenal. You are doing so many wonderful things, and I look forward to being able to work with you more and hearing you on Sunday. And one of the things we like to know for people, and I know that this is particularly important right now, how are you fostering mental health for yourself? Because this is something we all need to do.
Yeah, I won't sugarcoat it, I guess. It's been pretty challenging in a way because I, sometimes I feel that I have multiple lives.
Mhm.
I think that residency alone is actually can be very challenging, and it is. And the way I prevent the burnout in that is by really doing the work with minds, and I get a lot of energy from doing that as a more macro level change. But at the end of the day, what that means is I'm working an entire shift at a hospital, and then I'm coming home and doing a second job, and it does take a toll to some extent. There's like a balance of energy and excitement versus like lack of sleep and poor nutrition.
Mhm.
Um, but what has increased, I will say, in the past few months is my meditation practice, and so that's something that I'm pretty strict with in terms of making sure I do it every day. I do get outside and do the hikes, and I've been journaling quite a bit as well. So those are things that I'm doing. I think the yoga is also a pretty integral part of my life, although it's been a little more challenging these days without being able to go to like my studio or the class and interact with that community. And it really shows that for me, a huge part of my wellness is actually my community.
Yeah.
Um, and what I've had to do is shift how I take care of myself to actually be a little bit more internal. And it's been an interesting journey the past few months with this COVID pandemic to do that.
I think that for everyone, that has been how do we find that community? And there are ways to do that. Unfortunately, sometimes that takes time. And it sounds like you've got a lot of time that you're working. So, because one of the things that I've found is reaching out. I've gotten in touch with people I haven't talked to in years. There's sort of this need to connect with
Mm.
people, and in some ways connect with even people from the past or just checking in on people, but that's difficult. Is your yoga studio offering online?
Yeah, they are doing that now. Um, so I do need to. I do it occasionally. The other nice thing is that there's someone in my building who actually has been leading some yoga sessions for folks outside, which is great.
Oh,
Uh,
nice.
but again, it's a community of like just getting together for dinner on a Friday night, um, and having a Shabbat or whatever it is, and just like that disconnect and that connection with like other humans, or like just getting a hug. I think there's this concept of like skin hunger now, right?
Yes.
So I'm a very extroverted person, and so I think in a way this time has been really good to me in
Mm.
that I've been able to really focus inward quite a bit. um, and it's been really nice in that way because I started mines when I was about 19 or 20, and
Wow.
I'm 30 now. So for me, it's been like I've been guided a lot by a professional career development and not as much internally and personally. And so it's given me an opportunity to dive into that and like bring out the inner child.
That's good. I think it's really important to bring out that inner child. And one of the things that we often underestimate is how important that inner child is. That um, I have, yeah, I have teens, and I think that getting back to that laughter, getting, those times that we can laugh together are really important, or times that you can, I don't know, just go back, but reaching out to those things. Um,
Yeah. And if you think about mindfulness and you think about like who is the most mindful person you can think of, it's usually a child, who's like constantly discovering something new and wonderful and is like losing themselves in it.
yes,
And that's something that we should all try to kind of focus in on right now. And
yeah.
it'll allow us to start to recognize some of the silver linings. And I say that, and I have hope for the silver linings, despite going to work in a hospital every day and seeing these pretty traumatic situations. I still think that if we start to look inward and we can do that, there are some silver linings out of this.
I believe there will be silver linings. I believe this is a hard time, but I think that often that's good comes out of that. So we'll see where we go. This
Yeah.
was awesome. You are fantastic. I feel so honored to have been able to get some time. And so we will post a link to the
Okay.
Minds Foundation so that people can learn more about Minds Foundation, and to the Never Alone Summit, so that I
Yeah.
highly suggest you look at both of those, because they're phenomenal.
Yeah, and people can follow us on social media at Minds Foundation, and we're actually doing like a Mindful Mondays thing where we're going to be posting up a lot of tools and resources for folks, and they can kind of share how they're taking care of themselves too. So there'll be a lot of content coming.
And I've joined. You've had several webinars that have.
We have, and I would say that the each one of them has been very unique and powerful. Our most recent was on overcoming addiction, and we had a number of folks on it, including David Sheff from Beautiful Boy, and Carol, who runs a lot of the AA groups here in LA, and Dave Marin, who's a recovery coach and author of a pretty popular book with his ex-wife, which is very interesting. I will say that the one we have coming up will be Tuesday, I believe. I am super excited for it. It's actually focused on veterans mental health in honor of Memorial Day. And so we'll be putting that up pretty shortly, and people can register. It's all free to attend.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and yeah, and we did dating during a pandemic,
I
and
saw that one.
yeah, like how to use music and arts for emotions. And so we're really trying to offer tools for everyone. And it's fun, educational. People can ask questions, and yeah, it's really, for me, it's been a constant. Maybe mine is an excuse for me to always be learning.
That's great. It gives, I have to say, and I've said it several times, that these interviews have been one of the favorite things I've ever done, because I've gotten to talk to amazing people. I just think it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I love, and I'm honored that you asked me to be on, and it's always really great to chat with you. And I know that there's a lot of work we can do together.
Joining us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, Donna. I appreciate it too.
Thanks. Thanks everybody for tuning in.